Hello everyone, I'm ThatsRidonkulous, and I created Backcut 2, part of MapLabs' test tube number 10, the wrap-up. Backcut 2 is a sequel to the original Backcut. You can play in Run Think Shoot Live Vil 2. You can find that on MapLabs' ModDB page or on runthinkShootLive.com. This is developer commentary on Backcut 2, so I'm going to talk about some of my thoughts, challenges, triumphs, obstacles, everything that happened during the developmental phase. And kind of giving some insight into how this came to be what it is. And I hope this helps out other mappers who are just looking for a different perspective on things or are just kind of curious on how this came to be. Before I get started, I wanted to give a sincere thank you to 1UpD. Although he didn't have a hand in creating the sequel, he did do a fantastic job working with me on Backcut 1. If it wasn't for him and his fantastic work, I don't think Backcut 1 or Backcut 2 would ever have the same level of charm and character that the original could ever have. So thank you, 1UpD, for helping shape this fantastic world that is always a blast to work in and create. So I'm currently in the developer build, but Backcut 2 didn't make any changes between the developer build and the final release. There are still some bugs that made it through. Happens with every map I make. There's always some level of jank with it, but yeah, I'm working in I'm playing this in the dev build just because I have not installed the final version of the wrap up, and there hasn't been anything that changed since then. So what you see here is going to be what you see in the final release. So Backcut 2 is a sequel. I'm going to pause it as soon as this loads. That picks up right off after where Backcut 1 leaves off. So, to kind of introduce or kind of segue Backcut 1 into Backcut 2, I used a blank screen with a bunch of auditory cues. That's just a bunch of ambient generics that contextualize what happened in those few minutes between Backcut 1, where you are escaping a facility in a vehicle, to crashing and kind of getting captured. I represented it audibly first because I didn't feel it was necessary, nor would I have the time to kind of visually represent a car crash happen in the week-long thing, or the week-long deadline that I had to work on this. So I just left it sort of intentionally as auditory for everything, and then just kind of have a static set piece to visually contextualize what's going on. Because you can hear something, and kind of that can be left up to interpretation, but seeing something as well kind of helps further that whatever idea that you have going on in your head. So, I'm losing my train of thought here. I have a lot to talk about. This whole entry, aside from a few key things, was actually all made within a week, or within the 9-day deadline. I think the last few days of the competition were spent just visually detailing. I had a surprisingly good workflow that can either be accredited to a strong motivation to work on this project or the implications of COVID-19, where I was essentially locked in my house all day, every day. So I got a lot done, and I'm pretty happy with the work ethic that happened on here. Because prior to this level, I've actually been having a few personal issues and a lot of other stuff could be going on that really affected my motivation, where I could not get anything really out there. I tried to get some stuff done with Niker 107 and Mat 71490 on Fusionville 2, but I started to fall behind because of personal issues with my dog and family, and just a bunch of stuff. But no excuses. I'm glad that I was able to find some motivation to now. I guess kind of skies opened up. Anyway, enough of that. Back to the level. So you start off in a prison cell, and I kind of wanted originally this this competition level to be faithfully to Backcut, so you would have some Backcut elements. But instead of Run, Think, Shoot, Liveville, I wanted it to be Smoke on the Water, which was a Map Labs competition featuring themes of fire and water and using them in interesting ways. So when I made this in mind, originally it was supposed to be all about fire and water and all that good stuff and thermals. So this is why I have this prison cell thing here. So you wake up, and there's not much you can do in this prison cell. You can only do a select few things, and it is rather barren in this prison cell because I feel if I over-detailed this prison cell, players would be really confused on like what they had to do, because this puzzle is not a very it isn't in the gameplay language of Half-Life 2. You don't know this naturally. It's not like shoot an explosive barrel and whatever. You do know that this is an explosive barrel, so having it placed in front of the jail cell means to the player that, okay, maybe they have to blow this up to get out. I saw some players go to this bucket and try to like catch some sparks from this thing and kind of bring it over here, and other players trying to like block this. It was cool seeing them experiment. I wasn't worried about them kind of experimenting around because I didn't want it to be a linear puzzle. In fact, that's why I actually have this button toggle on and off, to kind of get in the player's mind that maybe this is the right way to go, maybe this isn't the right way to go. They're playing around an experiment, and I think that's more important than giving them a puzzle and holding their hand through it, because I could have easily made this valve turn and this gas stay on permanently, but that kind of forces the player into the next step of the puzzle rather than having them go into the next step of the puzzle on their own accord. So the goal of this puzzle is to I mean, at this point they see an explosive barrel and they see gas, some kind of flammable gas, so they're trying to figure out how to ignite it. So I have a sparking light here to kind of contextualize that maybe some sparks would have something to do with igniting a flame. I'm trying to get that idea in their head without being explicit about it. And it actually, in early playtesting, it wasn't obvious enough that the key to this is to take a cinder block or the bucket or whatever physics object and smash the light bulb. Now, that's not in Half-Life 2 language at all, so I had to really make sure to kind of guide the player into thinking that that is a possibility without making it explicit and, you know, assuming their intelligence. Like, you have to find that good balance between giving them enough to work with so that they can solve it on their own, but not giving them too little or too much so that they actually feel like they're doing something or they don't feel totally lost. So anyway, now that this is sparked off, also this is a little bit of a clue here that there's a cinder block resting here on the pipe, just so you can kind of, I mean, some players accidentally grab this and break the light anyway. What can you do about it? I guess I could have moved it over. I could have moved it over a little bit, but still, I kind of wanted to give just as many clues as possible, and that includes attaching these two cables together to the lights, so that when you turn on the gas and when the lights are sparking, it'll ignite a flame, blow up the barrel, and you can escape the prison cell. So now once we're out, we're kind of greeted with a extremely unfriendly environment, and I suppose it's time to talk about the visuals. There is a heavy use of color correction going on in this level, where it looks disgustingly uncanny. You can tell with how orange the flashlight is, you can tell later what the skybox color is, and And you can really tell with stuff that you can't really traditionally recolor with average lighting, like fire particles, the sun, like, a lot of particles really. And I wanted that. That was something that I really wanted for. Is just something that's like really gross and stylized, sort of like a Blade Runner or Mad Max type feel, just high energy. And it really stands out. I used heavy color correction before in my abridged entry, Highway 17, where the second half of the level it's in like this really eerie, cool blue, and there's a bunch of like this weird no gravity stuff going on, and it really added to the atmosphere. So I encourage everyone to use color correction to some degree in their level, maybe not to an extreme degree like you see here or in Highway 17, especially if it's just a traditional Half-Life level, but if it's something out there, you can go for it. Just play around and see something that works. The more you play around with it, the more comfortable you'll get with it, the more unique you can make your color correction be. But for like traditional Half-Life 2 levels, I'd say go for like some really subtle color changes, just enough to change the mood of it, but not like the whole like lighting and flashlighting or anything. So, back to the level. Some players are observant enough to see that there is some supply crates here, saw blade, and it's kind of highlighted by this light here. There's an immovable closet, which for most players they might be like, okay, so because there are playable space items here, like supply crates, even though I can't get to them, I should be able to get to them somehow. And this is going to be a backtracking thing that I wanted to implement, where you kind of go through the whole level until you get the gravity gun, and then optionally you can go back and kind of get a head start on resources. If you're observant enough and you want to try, they're like mini games, but they're just something to return after too. I mean, if you had the gravity gun already, it would be a no-brainer. You just punt this closet out of the way and get it. But right now you don't have it, so it might be a little bit more of a puzzle until you get the gravity gun later, and then you're like, aha, I do have to go back here and get it. So, if there were no crates here and this was just like random props here, I can almost guarantee that players would not come back here, because if they just see like decorations, they don't know if this is a playable space or not. They don't know if they can actually get back there. Even if they have the gravity gun, they might ignore this entirely. But because they see supply crates here, and it could be something else, it could be like a weapon, armor pack, health pickup, whatever, they'll know that that's something that they can get to. This is just a set piece, you can't go in there. I should probably, I guess if I had some extra time and go back, I would probably have like the citizens say like a voice line or two, just being depressed. I had one playtester grab a bucket with the gravity gun later and hurl it at her, and she didn't do anything. I should have done something, but yeah. You can't access this ladder, it's just a visual thing. I was playing around with some curves, which really adds a lot of character to the level when you just kind of throw it in wherever. Just like really blocky levels look okay, but like having arches above looks cool. Having like rounded corners and stuff looks cool. Just stuff to kind of break up that grid theme. Sorry, that was my Discord if you heard that. And then a zombie and some blood here and a zombie. So like you can kind of see like this mini story going on where it's like a prisoner, just like you were, and then down the line there's like a missing blood stain. You're like, okay, so they might have like beaten the shit out of someone and took them, and then down the line later there's a zombie in there. This also contextualizes the presence of zombies later in the level, so it doesn't just seem like, oh, there's zombies appearing out of nowhere. It's more grounded of a concept that you're used to. And then we open up to the main chamber, which is what I wanted this map to revolve around for the most part for part 1. You'll return to this area later, and once you have the gravity gun. So acquiring the gravity gun in this level opens up a ton of metaphorical doors. It's just a matter of how observant you are so that you can get past it. So there's a ladder over here. If you go up this now, it'll break. However, if you let's see. So if you go up here now, it'll break, and you can't use it. However, if you ignore it and go up past through all of this, and you make it up to the catwalk anyway, I have it disabled so that you can still actually use the ladder. The reason I have that figured is because If you are up here on the catwalk and you fall down, you can just use a ladder to get back up again because you were already up there. You already progressed to that point. That ladder kind of serves as a checkpoint. But at the same time, I didn't want the players skipping half the level, so I wanted this to break and kind of encourage exploration as well as kind of showing that this is a very dangerous place, that this ladder doesn't really function. It's kind of rusty and it broke as soon as you touched it. So kind of telling the player to be careful, as well as, this isn't a very safe place to be in, so that they can be on their toes. At the same time, once the player is up here, it isn't too far until they get the gravity gun, and when they get the gravity gun, they can get back up to this platform a lot easier than if they did not have the gravity gun, because there are no stackable props anywhere around here until you get like up to a point where it doesn't even matter. I'm not really restricting the player from getting up there. I'm discouraging it. I guess if they really tried hard enough, they can. They're not missing out on anything on the left here. It's just extra world building and panning out the time, but past that, it's whatever. There's a little secret area here. You might have seen me earlier looking at this through a grate. Now, you can't really break the supply crate yet, so this is also encouraging the player to come back with a gravity gun and grab whatever goodies are inside later. Oh, I've talked a lot already. Using lighting kind of in a Half-Life style, but a little bit more straightforward. I'm kind of using lighting to always guide the player. So when you come out here, these are like fill lights. They're kind of soft lighting. You don't really care much about it. Here's like a light that kind of shows something important, as well as it being a different color. It also has a high intensity, and it's a cone shape, so it's not just a fill light like this where everything kind of blends in, but it's like the light is pointing at this. Same here. You have all this light being splashed on the wall, as well as these white pipes kind of guiding you over to the right. And this kind of serves as like a signpost that, like, okay, kind of keep going this way. Then you enter the main room. You may be encouraged to look up by this red and white wall, further looked up by this body hanging out. So there's a lot of vertical elements that kind of point you towards the sky, which I kind of wanted to tell the player, hey, this is where you want to go up to. But how to get up to that first, the player might try the ladder and then they fall down. There's a cool lighting trick here where I have a light that's like kind of on the ground, but it points upward, so it creates this beautiful shadow on this wall here, which kind of just like points in the same direction if you look at it in a certain way. And then this spotlight here is just kind of there for like a general fill light, just so you can have some nice like shadows on back ends instead of it all being all flat. I suppose that's pretty much it for this room. We'll get back to this room later when we get there. Here's a zombine soldier, a little bit half and half. I have no idea why, but when you grab this, the torso doesn't move. But in every iteration of the level before hitting the dev build, it did fall. Like, it's not like asleep or anything. It's strange, but I can live with it. So, originally, I had this door lead to like a really open, very dark room, sort of like what you'll see in the future, but it was like more square instead of rectangular, and you could see the gravity gun. It was just lying on the floor, and you had to go through a couple of side rooms to get to it, but there wasn't really any point to it. You were just kind of walking through rooms, and then when you get the gravity gun, you can platform back out. It just felt really awkward to go through, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna scrap this and like kind of. I wanted to have like some kind of mini game in this area before I added a corridor. It would be like another open room, and then you'll get back up to here, and then you have another liminal space, and then you'll go back down, and then to another big mini game, and then you'll get the gravity gun finally, and then you can finally get out of here. But having this whole other mini game, quote unquote, was very strenuous. It didn't fit well with the pacing. It just didn't work out layout wise. It just didn't work in anything. And so instead of trying to fight it and work with it, I just scrapped it and turned it into a corridor. And then I added a mini game here. In the original playtesting version, I wanted to add a mechanic where the player would catch on fire and other things would catch on fire, and there was a wall of fire here. so that they would have to run into this water here and they would extinguish themselves. I got it to work, but then I realized I'm never going to use this ever again in the level. It's just a stupid gimmick, so I scrapped that too, and I left this fire in here, and I left the puddle room here, and I left a health charger here. There were no boards on it. It was just an open doorway. There was no crate here. It was just this room with a health charger on the wall and some water. And that was it. Playtesters, I don't even think I gave it to playtesters. Playtesters are like, this room has no purpose. I was like, yeah, you're right. So I put a little mini game here where you can kind of see there's a supply crate in here. There's some boards here. There's a fire here and some explosive cans. And there's no way to really blow them up yourself, so you kind of got to use the fire this way. And then you can kind of look at it through the window too if you wanted to, which is, it was a cool little thing. Kind of using the fire as a mechanic. This was still like smoke on the water levels before I went to run, think, shoot, live again. This is a very basic corridor. You can see where it's just 128 units tall, and then another 64 units tall, and I added all of this detail on the ceiling, and it looks pretty good because of how the lighting is, and some decals, and some crap everywhere. some composite props and some just more decals. I think this corridor would look a lot more boring if this ceiling were lowered to just another 128 unit thing, but you can get a lot of good detail going in ceiling detail, and it doesn't affect gameplay at all. It's just stuff to look at. Some more additional player guidance, I guess, if you want to go back here. Everything in this scene is orange except for this green room. There's blood kind of trickling in here. These pipes come from the ceiling, go over here. Pipe turns, as well as a light source around the corner, so it's encouraging you to go around. You can see the doorway here, some like dark and light shadows. Just like, the more you think about lighting, the more you consider each of your lighting sources, the more interesting your map is going to play out, and the more you're going to be comfortable with guiding the player. Because lighting in general form is like two of the best ways to guide a player. That isn't like a straightforward, obvious, like, oh, make sure you go here, and then you have like a little like thing on the HUD, like a waypoint. But just like general guidance is just like, here, you can go this way or this way, here's some lighting, and so on and so forth. And you can also play around with lighting, just for the fun of it. I kind of have this here, just because I always liked how it looked having hollowed out stairs. I did this like once or twice in a couple other competitions, and it's just, every time I use it, it's so cool. Just to have lighting coming from these stairs. It doesn't make logical sense. Like, why would you have a light here? But, you know, you make cool shadows, and it looks nice. Some more, like, green, just to kind of contrast with the strong yellows. Because if this was also a yellow light, it would kind of blend in a lot more. This room is pretty dark. It's just a pure minigame. I could have put, like, a fill light in here, like a very faint light, to show the player that there's actually something here. Many players walk by it. It's just a storage room with a crate in it. When you get the gravity gun, you can just pull it towards you. You might have to like punt all the crap out of the way. It gives you a battery, and you can just kind of like bring it up to you on one of these cracks and get it. I originally had a side vent here, just on this wall right here, so that the player would break the crate. They would bring the battery close to them, and then they could push the battery through the vent there and get it. But they were requiring the battery anyway through these cracks in the fence, so I was just like, you know what, whatever, just leave it as is, and I filled the vent back up and just left it as is. I had one playtester specifically like point out that this light didn't have any cables to it, and so I used some combine cables and just kind of I like built half this room around giving this light some context instead of just having a light prop there, and I think it helps with like the flow too. So that was really good feedback. It was just a lot of this map is just like some brush like not even a lot of brush detail. Like this is just like regular brushes, and then, you know, slap a texture for the whole room on, and then just do a bunch of decals and physics props everywhere else, and maybe some static props, and then it just looks interesting. You're not going to be in this room for long. It doesn't serve any gameplay purpose, but it's still just nice to go through. So originally, and this is one of the bigger changes I made based on playtester feedback. Originally, this whole catwalk was only 1 unit wide. These 2 units right here, these 2 squares, didn't exist. It was just this. and then you would walk just straight across this, and these two saw blades weren't even there. However, playtesters said that on their way back when they had the gravity gun, it was awkward standing on like this square to punt these saw blades into the wall, so I brought it out a little bit more just to make it more comfortable. But when I brought it out a little bit more, some players didn't even know that they could use the saw blades to platform, so I took out this segment and put these saw blades here so that it kind of showed that like you can walk on them, or at least you can use them as a bridge. If I were to go back, I would probably just reintroduce the Backcut tutorial where like the only way to progress is to use the saw blades instead of you can just jump over this. But I would probably go back and like remove this whole catwalk, extend this wall outward, and put a bunch of more saw blades on this wall so that you would jump from here to the first saw blade, to the second saw blade, to the third and the fourth. And that way it would be impossible to make a jump from here to here. But at the same time, it would be a little bit awkward to still, like, I don't know. I think it would be a worthwhile change if I could go back and do it. There's a little Easter egg here. Many, I don't think a single person has found it out yet. I think one was like, was that an Easter egg? And then, like, when they tried to pull it towards them, then they just wouldn't be bothered. I'm going to save this right here. I do have autosaves, but I don't remember where. This is strange. I guess when Backcut 2 released, this saw blade in particular, I think, didn't have collision. I guess I forgot to parent the clip brush to it, maybe? I don't know. For every saw blade in this level, it has a parented clip brush to it so that the player can actually stand on these. The player clip brush doesn't collide with the wall, so that means that the saw blade can actually, you know, go into the wall. But I guess I forgot to parent this one, because like I can still stand on it, but when people moved it, I guess it was either it was parented to something else or it just wasn't parented to anything. I'll have to go back and check that. But that was one of the big bugs that I had. That was super frustrating for players, which I apologize. It was an oversight. So here we are at the infamous gravity gun room. I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted to do for this level. I originally thought like I wanted the player to be trapped and do something really complicated, but like complicated enough that it wouldn't be like overwhelming to them, but at the same time it would create enough tension. But I think the strongest element to this segment would be the music, because without the music it would just be like, what am I doing? But yeah, this is probably my favorite, one of my two favorite parts of the whole level. I guess I kind of ruined the player's experience with like just putting these wherever. I could have put them like down here and like kind of funneled the player in here and have like a fence on both sides, like really close to the player so they couldn't see the barrels until it was too late, but I just didn't bother with it. If they saw this, they're probably like really freaked out by now. But the only thing to do in this room is to get that gravity gun and get the hell out of here. Just some like detail props all over the floor. A lot of the props I used here are from the silo. Episode 2 silo. Really useful stuff. Anyway, let's get this started. So it's locked, the door shuts behind you, and you're like, what the heck? And then lights dramatically flicker on. It's red, so it's kind of like a panic mode. I'm going to pause it right here because the event is timed here. So originally there was no explicit turn off the gas message that's like Saw type thing. It was originally just like these open and then it was just a wall texture and players were like, what? What's going on? And then a fire will turn on and the music will start playing and then these doors will open up, but they don't know what the hell is going on. I wanted to make it really obvious with these barrels here that like the fire is gonna go slowly creep towards the barrels and you gotta turn off the gas to do it. But I don't know, player guidance was not the best in this part of the level. I think honestly the most fitting for a backcut like Mad Max Saw type environment for this was to actually explicitly tell the player what they had to do for this. Um, I guess I could have been cryptic with like some kind of metaphor, like if you seek salvation, turn off, you know, turn off the intoxicants or whatever, like something really dumb like that. But in the amount of time that the player would be thinking about that, like it's a timed event. You know, it has to be something that they get instantly, and I didn't have time to figure out anything that was like that had hit that good balance of cryptic but also informative. So I just left it explicit, and it kind of worked out because players were like, "Yep, these crazy combines in the wasteland, yeah, that's something they would do." So it worked out. I had this paint here just to kind of nod towards the fact that this is painted on. But yeah, anyway. So this is a cool thing. You can actually finish this whole thing just by walking. Just follow the pipes. There's sort of like a different gimmick to each of these different levels, or different kind of mini games, but they're very, very obvious. You don't even have to hold that valve, you can just press it and walk away. So this one's swimming. The one over there that I'm going to next is an elevator. I know I'm walking, I hope I'm going to freak some people out. You can see that shadow that I did earlier in the level on there, which is pretty cool. So in the last one you swam down, in this one you're going up and ascending. You can press that. Here's a little shortcut. You can go down the stairs too. I mean, I did a lot of self-playtesting, trying to figure out like what was the best balance between tension and, you know, realistically being able to do it. Some zombies that you gotta burn. I have a scripted schedule set so that the zombies are attracted to the fire. Follow the pipes. Oh no, how do I get in there? Oh, there's a hole in the wall. I had some playtesters get stuck on these cinder blocks, so I had it set so that as soon as the player interacts with each of these cinder blocks, they turn into debris and they don't collide with the player. So I still got plenty of time. And I haven't even sprinted. But I did take some shortcuts, to be fair. But pretty cool stuff. Each of these pipes leads you to a different valve. Each valve has a monitor next to it that shows the progress of the fire. If I were to go back, I would make each of these lights green instead of red because it's very hard to see it turn on the screen here. And even then, probably the worst point of this is some players made it to all 4 valves. Like they got that part of it down, but I failed to kind of teach them that they had to go back to this main valve to turn off the gas entirely. I think originally, earlier in the level, I had it set so that if you just turned off all 4 valves, the fire went away. But players completed it. No, not players. I completed it so fast without even trying that there was no real tension. Like it was only about like halfway there. The music didn't even build up to that heavy drum part yet. Oh, by the way, the music is Half-Life Alyx. I just thought it sounded cool when I listened to it when I was walking my dog, and I kind of had this idea in my mind, like picturing the whole scene in my mind, which is really cool. Like, I think when you're designing these levels, try to spend some time away from the screen. Just try to think and digest, like, you know, what's this going to feel like? What's it going to look like? You know, how does it gel with the music? Are there specific sounds or imagery that like you want to see? Because like this whole room with the barrels and all these corridors filled with the barrels, that was my visual vision, my visual vision. So like I pictured in my head the player running through these corridors frantically, like no matter where they looked, there was always going to be explosive barrels. So they knew that if they ran out of time, they would definitely die. And it's almost like it's almost crazy how many barrels are in this part of the facility. And yeah, I thought that was really cool. And then also the sound part of the vision. So like, can you picture what's happen with the sound? Can you maybe have anything go like within the beat of the sound, or like anything happen like in sync with the music? Because like having stuff in sync with music is actually like really cool. At least I think so. So yeah, each of these pipes leads over to a thing. They're all colored white because I wanted them to make sure that like they contrasted with the environment nicely enough. Visuals are kind of lacking here, I will admit. However, that's that's because a player isn't really spending a lot of time in these rooms, whereas earlier in the level they were spending plenty of time. So like here, this is like a very detailed environment. At least in my opinion, to my capability, it is detailed for me. I'm sure other people can detail this way better than I can, but for me, I thought this was good enough because this is like a main room, as opposed to something over there where like the player would spend 15 seconds and they're not really paying attention to the beautiful visuals. As long as there's like something there that kind of shows that there's like some detail in it. Otherwise, you don't need to like immaculately detail, every little nook and cranny in faster paced rooms. It helps if you have the time to do it. I would do it, but as a timed competition, I would rather focus my time elsewhere, if that makes sense. Anyway, now that the player has the gravity gun, they can go do a whole bunch of other stuff, which I'm going to spoil for you now. So there's one minigame down. Oh, yeah, also, if the player didn't blow these up with the gas canisters, they could have easily just like punted the boards out of the way. I goofed up and I made it so that if you pick up the boards with your hands, you can also knock them out of the way, but it's whatever. Oh yeah, I got this crate from down here, if you remember. So it's just another extra reward here. You can I saw one player just, yeah. Yep, and that zombie no longer has to suffer. Oh man, and I think this is, I don't know if that's an NPC or if that's a prop, I forget. But she doesn't react, or he, it's a randomized thing. They don't react. This is a little awkward. I guess I would expand the wall out a little bit more so that the closet can go into that thing. Player's got a saw blade. Cool, cool, cool. Here we go. So anyway, yeah, this is what I was talking about with like the ladder being broken. You can easily just like get back up to where you were just by stacking these crates. Maybe. Either stacking these crates or using the, like, I actually added this wall specifically like just so the player could do this. And yeah, here, this is the saw blade without collision. So I guess it's parented to something else. So I'm gonna put you over there. Out of sight and out of mind. Let's find out if that player clip is actually, like, still here. No, it's parented to something else. Okay. Strange thing. Anyway, I have these, like, little cut manhack decal things here to kind of help signify to the player. Because, I mean, this is a super, like, if you haven't played the original Backcut, you wouldn't know what to do here. And that's a failure on my part as a level designer. I really should have put dedicated tutorial on teaching the player that, like, yeah, this is what you have to do with, or this is what you can do with saw blades. So I'm relying on expected knowledge that you can do this. This isn't something you should do. This is a bad. I done goofed. I did a bad. But if I did, like, this would be good if, like, earlier in the level I did an explicit tutorial, or if I made Backcut 1 and Backcut 2 into, like, a map pack where you played the original Backcut just before this level. Like, it would make sense. And I wouldn't have to put another tutorial in here. But because this is a standalone thing, I would have to put a tutorial in here. So anyway, the player gets up here, there's some more saw blades around. Here's a nice little jump section that I thought of spur of the moment. I think originally I had it so like they would have to like just climb this wall all the way up if they wanted to and just use the different walls, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That would be torture. I mean, it's already kind of annoying enough as is. This section in particular isn't as bad. I think this is my favorite saw blade climbing part in this map, because the other ones just aren't that good. And we make it up here. I'm going to trigger an autosave there in case I fall. Now, there's something weird going on here. I have like... Yeah, there's like something that you can like push over here. I'm thinking that this is like a fizz box, because... or a fizz box or a funk brush, I forget which. But there is... like, this whole cage is a fizz box, except for like one of these walls. I forget which one of these walls. That's like a breakable entity. And when it breaks, like whatever this invisible thing is, but like it shows up here, but the collision is like fallen, like it's visibly parented, but like logically it's not. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, here's a cute little thing that I came up with that a lot of players seem to enjoy was the falling bodies. I think got a lot of enjoyment out of that, and I'm actually going to admit here, this actually came from the original Backcut when it was the think section and there was this gas canister suspended on a rope attached to a crane. The think section being like if you've played the original Backcut, that puzzle part where you have to jump across all those huts, and it was like a really bad platforming part of the level. Like it kind of sucked. And when you got up to the crane, like right where the gas canister is, you can like reel the crane in with the crank. And then when you got to it, players were like, okay, and they grabbed it like this. And they were like, I can't get it. And that was my fault because I had it set so that you had to press E on it. And you had to get really close to it to pick up the canister. However, I saw a few clever players be like, maybe I have to cut it off. So they actually took a saw blade from earlier in the level and they tried cutting the rope that attached the canister there to set it free. And I thought that was a brilliant... I wish I thought of that. That would have been perfect for the think section. And I remembered that when I was making this. I'm like, you know what? Why not put that to some good use? So I'm actually like really thankful for the creativity of some players. Because that little crate there was just a minigame that was directly inspired by what a couple of players did in the original Backcut. So I think it's really important to like watch as many playthroughs as possible, especially like blind playthroughs where people don't know what they're doing, because they might do something you'll never expect. They might do something you haven't even thought of before. And the proof is in the pudding. This was a really tough climbing section. If I could go back, I would remove these two annoying things because players kept getting stuck on them. I would probably like just not put them there, I guess, or like add some kind of no collision debris. Anyway, once we get out here, it is a cool little vista I spent a lot of time on. Why is the wind going backwards? That's strange. The snow is going backwards. Normally it's coming this way towards me, but it's going the opposite way. That is strange. Okay. So anyway, you get up here. There, originally it was just like the hole to whatever facility this is, and that was it. But I added a couple of physics props that you can toss in the pit if you wanted to, just to kind of, you know, tell that pit who's boss and kind of, yeah, shove it. As well as like seeing those chairs there kind of shows that like people were like watching you, kind of, or people were there. Like it's just like an additional like world building element, which I think is cool. Got out here. I wanted this to be a wasteland that pays homage to the original Backcut level. In fact, the 3D skybox here was actually copy-pasted with some major adjustments. It was copy-pasted from the original Backcut to here. So like I actually used like really tiny rock props for the 3D skybox. We're talking like about like half this size, like like this size rocks. And since they're scaled up so much in the skybox, they look huge. And there are huge rocks that are to scale. Like those are in the 3D. Those are in the playable space. Those are in the 3D skybox. It's like almost like a seamless transition. It's so good. I lucked out with those assets. So anyway, when you get out here, you hear a Geiger counter. I wanted to have like radiation Geiger counter sounds playing when you kind of start to leave the playable space, because I didn't want to restrict the player with like a fence or anything. A hurt trigger kind of sucks, but it was the best thing I could do to make it look like an infinite wasteland without being restrictive. There's probably a better way to do it, but I couldn't think of anything in the given time. So a little bit past this telephone pole, you'll start to take some radiation damage. It was a lot harsher in the playtest build, but then I made it a little bit more lenient. So instead of 2 units multiplying every second, it was 1 unit multiplying by itself. 1 unit of damage multiplying by itself every like 3 seconds, I think. And here we were before, just kind of looking at where we've been, utilizing the space. There's a little car wreck here, and if you go over and explore it, you get some suit battery. It's cool. And also, this also serves as a good breadcrumb, because when you go out here, there looks like there's nothing out here. But when you turn around, you see, oh, it's the boss arena, Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, yeah. I'm totally not inspired by Mad Max. No, yeah, this entry totally is. So for the 3D skybox, you can kind of see like it fades seamlessly into the sky texture. That I'll show you later, but or unless I forget to show you later, in which I will not show you later. I probably won't show you later. There's a VMF and a BSB. You can no-clip at any time, actually. There is fog textures, which are just like gradients, where it's like a solid color and it fades to nothing. So I put a huge like ring of that around my skybox, and this is something that Clems does in his levels too, which is a really good trick. So he has like infinite oceans. Like he does the same trick with that. Match that together with a good fog value, and you got yourself like a really seamless fog, and it looks great. So yeah, just a ring of a texture going around the level, and then this coast texture kind of breaks that immersion. But I kind of wanted some kind of horizon, just like a signpost sort of, because like when you look here and back, you can't really tell which direction is like the right way, but like this is like a landmark and this is like a landmark, so it kind of helps a little bit. But anyway, back to the breadcrumb point. Oh wait, I already talked about that, never mind. I'm going insane. Yeah, anyway, you can go over this way. Originally I had player clips above these dunes, but players tried to go over this anyway, so I just removed the player clips. I mean, you know, just let them play it how they want to. If they want to go through this boat, which was the intended path, let them. If they don't want to go through it, whatever. But yeah, these were Lost Coast props, which served really nicely. I found a lot of the Half-Life 2 assets worked really nicely in my favor for this environment, but I can totally see like custom assets being a lot more useful. But yeah, you can totally get up there. I'm not really going to bother because of how these displacements are laid out. It is possible, and you can kind of see the 3D skybox seam from up here, but not really from anywhere else. So it's it was kind of like a dividing element. Yeah, but this was really fun to make. I just made a lot of arches and multiplied them by 4, so like 90-degree arches, and then multiplied them by 4. Actually, I made 4 blocks. Like this is a straight brush. This is a rectangular brush all the way through and through, and like the same thing for the north, south, east, and west. And then in between them, I did arches. Playing around with the arch tool can be really useful. And I just did some like brushwork detail here, and made a lot of funk details. Like vis-leaf calculation isn't too bad with this, but performance is still pretty good because there's not a lot being rendered anyway. For the dust, you can see like these tiny particles on my screen. Those are snow particles. I don't know why they're going this way instead of the normal way. Normally they're supposed to be coming towards me at this angle, but like flush with this wind. But I don't know why. Right now it's doing it the other way. Maybe it was because I loaded the background map before this. I have no idea. Anyway, the dust here is just a bunch of smokestacks. It's actually copy pasted from my 3D skybox in Backcut 1 in the very first level. It works very nicely. I have 3. I have one here. I have one, like, you can see, like, really close, like, basically on top of me here, and then one to the left there. And then the ones that are on the outside, the far left one and the far right one, are darker values. The one in the middle is a lighter value to kind of capture that sunlight, so that you can, so it's kind of layered. I think it really looks nice. And then with the color correction, let me just show you what it looks like without color correction. It looks like a standard Half-Life 2 level with that. I don't think it has anywhere near the same character. Like, it still looks okay, but just like the character of it is kind of lost. because it's like a pure blue sky, which I could have changed with like a sky texture. But like the gravity gun would have looked nowhere near as orangey as it does here because of, like, look at that. I don't know. I just thought the color correction was like a very major proponent in the visual language of this level. Is there anything else I'm missing before I can't remember. Anyway, here's the arena, which I actually made this a separate map for easier compiling first, and then I just pasted it into this level later. Some nice lighting tricks, just so you can see the sunlight splashing on here, and then there's actually like no detail in the darker areas, but there is a little bit of detail in the lighter areas. It's just whatever. It's not really intentional, it's just like, if I were to put detail somewhere, where would I put it? Type thing. And here it is, the infamous arena. So, there are a few systems at play here. There are these sentries at 4 different points. These guys are not NPCs, they're actually prop dynamics using a default animation. That way it's just cheaper on performance, so that they don't have to think about AI, since they're not really thinking at all. I just wanted to use them for their animations. During the fight, every few seconds, one randomly selected tower will kick down a barrel, and they'll play a little animation. However, if the player's health goes below 50, and they take damage again, or was it 50 or 30? I forget what the exact number is, but when the player's health gets low and they take damage, instead of kicking down a barrel, one of these random guys will kick down a supply crate that has health in it. Any random one. If they take damage again within like 5 seconds, they will throw down another crate until they are back up above the health threshold. And I recommend you look at my VMF to kind of look at how I did that if you're curious. It involves a logic player proxy, a logic compare, logic case for randomly selecting which one that I wanted to use, and a few logic relays for organization, as well as making sure that things don't refire constantly, because there is an NPC here with an SMG that shoots at me. So let's say my health is below 30. The player proxy takes my health, like gets info about my health every time I take damage. And that includes if I'm below the threshold. So if I am at 39 health and I go 38, 37, 36 from like different SMG shots, that's going to fire it 4 times. So I had to make sure that, and if it fired it 4 times, there would be like 4 randomly chosen people like throwing down. So that would be a ton of supply crates, which was unnecessary and it was kind of jank. So I added in a relay or a logic timer or something to kind of pad it out so that every 5 seconds, like, the player will still take damage, and it will still read it every time the player takes damage, but only at every 5-second interval will it actually do something about it, if that makes sense. Anyway, for more information, just look at the VMF. This whole boss fight would not be possible without map base. So the original concept of this was that the Combine actually take your vehicle and you fight off against it. Many people might think that was inspired by Demolisher's video, where you're fighting Gordon Freeman or Alex driving a buggy or whatever, or at least you're dodging them. I saw the video myself. I can't say that that's not inspired by it, because I saw the video. It was in my brain. It could have had some inspiration by it, but it actually came by me on a previous project that I scrapped in 2019 for Halloween Horror 2, where you played the whole map in a car, and you were running away from these weird monsters that were also driving a car. Which that level in itself was inspired by Beware, some indie horror game made by, I think, a Russian developer, some kind of Eastern European developer. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But it was totally inspired by that, because I just wanted to do that in Half-Life 2 to see if it was possible. So I made a test map of that and see if it worked, and it did work, which was cool. And then I found out that the AI could not keep up with a player in the car, because it uses an NPC vehicle driver, and the vehicle driver has to drive to specific points when it acquires a target. So let's say I'm standing where that barrel is, and the vehicle driver is going to that point. Even if the barrel moves, it's still driving to that point. So I had to find a good happy medium so that it could update its position, but not too much, because So it wouldn't update its position too much, because if it updates its position too much, the NPC vehicle driver will slam on the brakes for like a fraction of a second, and you can see it happen too. It'll slam on the brakes, it'll think for a bit, and then it'll go to the new position. But that position still isn't accurate to a constantly moving target. However, in this case, in this arena, it works out pretty nicely because the player... I did a couple of things. Because the player is constantly moving, it's a small circular arena, and because I made the car, I used a custom vehicle script to make the car super, super fast, like a lot of acceleration, a lot of good turning, so that the driver looked out of control, and it actually kind of compensated for itself, because when it would turn, it would like oversteer, or if it hit the acceleration, it would floor it. It just looked... It was really intense driving, matched with this bumpy terrain. It just worked really nicely with keeping a constant danger for the player. Granted, if you play this as many times as I did, the NPC vehicle driver is extremely dumb. But anyway, so moving on from that. Also, map base helped me with parenting an NPC to the passenger side. That's just a straight up Combine soldier that has an SMG just parented to the passenger seat. The driver is actually just a prop dynamic, which I'll substitute out for a ragdoll giblet later. Is it jib or gib? I can never tell. Forgive me. I always think jib is short for giblet. It's not like GIF. I think it's GIF. But anyway, I'm going off course here. Anyway, so the way this boss takes damage is there's an NPC bullseye with like 3,500 health on it. When it reaches half health, the passenger gets ejected and the car catches on fire, and the guy says, "Oh, I'm not going down that easy." So that's like halfway through the boss fight, and then when the bullseye hits 0, it's whatever. However, I couldn't parent the bullseye to a good spot where it could consistently take damage. I had to have a trigger, like I don't know if it was a button or like breakable. There's some kind of brush entity that I used to make a makeshift hitbox, and I used MapBase's damage transfer entity so that whatever damage that the hitbox that I made would take, and that hitbox was all around the car, the bullseye would take that damage instead. So I guess I could have had it so that when the hitbox broke, it would do something, and I have another hitbox so that when that hitbox also broke, it would do something else. But it kind of worked out nicely that it all that damage was going to a thing with actual health, like an NPC. So and it had the respective outputs. So I thought it was really clever. Again, take a look at my VMF if you are curious to see how all this was done. I encourage people to see, just because like it was tricky getting me to figure some of this out, and I hope it can kind of help other people too. But the Combine voice lines were done by me, and I offer a special thanks to CW3D. Although he's not credited in the level, I want to give him credit where credit's due. He came up with this fantastic Combine vocoder tutorial. It seems a little bit like Entropy Zero like, or kind of like Metro Copy. So I did some adjustments myself to make it like lower pitch and a little bit more distorted, so it kind of felt like a crazy soldier. But anyway, more Half-Life Alyx music. Some playtesters fought. It's tricky because you can't really gauge a player's skill in a fight like this. The health is fixed. It all depends on whether or not the player can hit their shots on the barrel, which not many players have that like natural ability to kind of like lead their shots with a physics object. Some people are really good at it, some people are really bad at it. That's fine. So I had to accommodate by doubling the length of the music, because some players took that long to defeat the boss. They still did it no problem, which I'm really proud of, that they could still do it and it didn't feel too bad on them. I just didn't want them to feel like they were being too slow when the music stops and it's just like an awkward silent fight. So I just doubled the duration of the length of the music. The car has subtitles, but because it's coming from the car, it's so far away that subtitles aren't even showing up. Whoa! Nice grenade. So yeah, the reason I have the passenger Music might be too loud, so I apologize. The reason I have the passenger here is so that the player doesn't cheese out the fight by like constantly getting real close to the boss, where the soldier would constantly shoot at him. Originally, I had the SMG soldier as a shotgunner, but the shotgun dealt way too much damage for what it was worth. Like even at mid range, it would deal a hefty amount of damage. And I didn't want an AR2 because an AR2 was both futuristic and it dealt a lot of damage at long range. So the SMG was a good balance. It doesn't deal much of any damage at all. The player can still probably cheese it anyway, but it discourages them from doing that rather than restricting them from doing that, which is, I think, the important part. See ya. But you can see, like, I'm gonna stand here, and he'll try to, like, make his way towards me. He's, like, super dumb. But the way that this arena is laid out encourages the player to keep moving, to keep finding barrels, and it kind of masks the stupidity of the AI. Oh, thank you. Uh-oh. It's not like I said, there's not a single map I've ever made that doesn't have some degree of jank. So right there, I think the player got caught on the hitbox, or maybe the hitbox of brush triggers that I made, or the car itself. Either way, it happens sometimes. I just gotta roll with the punches sometimes, you know? Oh, some people notice this cactus here. That's actually the generic actor that I used to make the voice lines. You can actually you just probably saw it rotate a bit when I when I walked up to it. Strange thing. I needed a model to use it just so I could see it, and I never took it out of. I never made it invisible. But yeah. Anyway, I had a lot of fun making this. Just from beginning to end, like it just clicked, you know. Like I think I worked on this non-stop for a whole weekend, like literally, like when I woke up to like when I went to bed, like Saturday and Sunday. I think that's. Oh, I apologize if I promised I was gonna talk about something and I didn't. My mind is totally like spaghetti right now. Like I said, thanks 1UpD for creating this fantastic just atmosphere and this foundation to get a sequel in the first place. Thank you for all the playtesters that provided really good feedback, even if they just recorded their gameplay, didn't say a word, like feedback-wise. Just seeing like what was going on in their mind was super helpful. Thanks to CW3D for offering that great tutorial that I would have never been able to figure out myself. But yeah. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to hit me up in the DMs if you have any like questions or comments, or make a comment on the video, I guess, or hit me up in Discord if you're in the Map Labs Discord with me. I love just seeing people grow. So like I hope this helps people grow. I hope it gives them like more insight of like what to do, what not to do, maybe like some pointers. If this inspires someone to make like a Wasteland themed map, that's really cool. I hope to see some more of it too, because like Half-Life 2 assets work surprisingly well for a theme like this. But yeah, thanks for watching my and listening to my what was like an hour-long rant. Oh my goodness, I don't know how long this is actually. Wait. Oh, it is an hour long. 1 hour, 3 minutes. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at OBS. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up the wrap up here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to reach out if you want any feedback on your own levels, or if you want to comment on stuff I've made. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear how you think. All sorts of good stuff. Smell you later. See ya.